Frank, thank you so much for joining us again today on Eureka. We're talking trade secrets. So I think if you think of Coca-Cola, that's probably the most obvious one. What is the story with Coca-Cola?
Well, I don't know if it's a true story or not, but the story goes that Coca-Cola protects the recipe or the formula for its syrup that it supplies for the manufacture of Coca-Cola drinks, and that it goes to great lengths to protect this as a trade secret.
Because so that is that. If that had to leak out, I mean, anybody and everybody would be making Coca-Cola.
Well, it's not so clear. I mean, these days with advanced chemistry, you can usually analyze the composition of most things. So whether or not you can actually reverse engineer Coca-Cola, I think is a difficult question, and probably you can do it without much trouble.
It's possible.
Yes,
but that's where the brand comes in, isn't it?
That's where the brand comes in. Coca-Cola's brand is terribly important. But the story is that they protect this as a trade secret, that it's only divulged to a very few people, and that they guard it with their lives.
And what if they don't come to work tomorrow?
Well, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Coca-Cola dries up.
But they're obviously doing something right. But I think, like we said, the brand has got a lot to do with that, because there's a lot of guys out there trying to, you know, to get to that recipe and doing their own sort of flavors of Coke.
Right.
But I mean, what protection do you have against someone that's trying to copy your recipe, Frank?
Well, if you don't have a patent for the formulation, then the only way of protecting something like a recipe is by keeping it secret.
Right, but let's say, how can you prove, if this guy is also making Coca-Cola, how can Coca-Cola prove that that guy stole the recipe and that formula is the same?
Well, it's a matter of evidence, and very often in situations like that you find that an employee of a company has left the company and taken trade secrets or confidential information with him. And you have to be it's a difficult issue, but you have to be able to provide the evidence.
It's difficult to prove, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at another example. What about KFC? Would you say their herbs and spices, that recipe,
well,
is also
again,
a trade secret?
They claim that it is. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But it's possible that they have the secret blend of herbs and spices, and that they keep it very confidential, that they only issue a limited amount of the already mixed batter to their franchisees, and that nobody who's running a KFC operation actually knows what goes into the mix of herbs and spices. Whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Well, what would be the process if you got a client to say, I've got this recipe and I need to, Mrs. Balls, for example, I want to protect that. What would be the first step and what would be the process?
Well, the first step would be to examine whether it's possible to file a patent application for the recipe. And recipes are difficult in this sense, because very often they are considered by patent lawyers and by patent examiners simply to be a question of trial and error, and they're not really protectable. So in those circumstances, you would probably advise the client to keep the recipe secret. And the advantage of keeping a recipe, and not only a recipe, but any know-how or trade secret, the advantage of keeping it secret is that as long as you keep it secret, it lasts indefinitely. It's not limited in time as a patent.
As a patent, only for 20 years.
Yes.
Oh, right.
So you get companies that license their know-how. And we're not talking here about the recipe for KFC or for Coca-Cola, but we're talking about highly technical know-how relating to production processes.
Right, right.
And companies license that know-how, and they protect it very vigorously. They keep it secret, but they don't necessarily patent it. And for that reason, they can actually continue to license the know-how almost indefinitely.
What about fragrances? Like a smell, like a you know, bottle of perfume. Would that not also be a trade secret?
It's basically exactly the same thing. It's a trade secret. There are highly competent people, highly specialized people called noses who formulate these perfumes, and they mix literally hundreds of different fragrances together to get a particular perfume. And that would be a trade secret, definitely.
What about the counterfeit fragrances though, Frank, that smell the same but have a slightly different, you know, labeling or branding on that?
Well, there the question is whether the counterfeit fragrance was copied from the original fragrance in some illicit manner, or whether it's simply a concoction that was developed independently. If it was developed independently, then the perfume manufacturer, the original manufacturer, will have to rely on its brand in order to protect its products.
That's quite difficult to do.
It is difficult. It is difficult.
But thank you, Frank. Thanks for joining us again today.
Okay.